I've had a bit of a cold the past couple days, so my voice wasn't doing the best. If you listen closely, you could probably still hear it being a little bit scratchy. Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. By the way, I came across a channel that has not only the soundtrack for Umineko, the entire game, in the order of appearance of the songs, but also many other playlists of lots of music from various other games similar to this. So first, I would recommend their channel as a place you could, if you ever want to just listen to music that's just nice instrumental music in the background, I think it would be a great channel. Jenny McLesbian. Also, I'm thinking if I can look through that playlist and see the names of the various games that are listed as apparently they're there for having great soundtracks, I may come across new games that I might want to read. Again, I don't know if this really counts as Let's Play, but it's technically a game. And a Let's Play is just a game of commentary. So, let's hop back into this, shall we? We're still at episode 3. Make sure there's no episode. Okay, page 4. We'll load this one. So how's everyone doing today? I'm looking forward to Christmas. I'm not doing anything special, but in general, I just like Christmas. Who else likes Christmas? I like Christmas. I like Christmas and I like Christmas trees. How old was I then, I wonder? Middle school? Probably, though I don't remember well. Anyway, I think I was about that age, which means maybe about 20 years ago. Back then, my grades weren't very good, and Mother was always angry at me. I tried to do my best in my own way, but I couldn't match up to Mother's expectations at all. Mother was always very strict with Rosa. I sympathized with her at the time. Humph. You say that even though you were always talking behind her back. Would you give it a rest, Ava? And then, where did you meet Beatrice, Rosa-san? Hideyoshi-san, you mustn't rush her now. You know, just realized something. Other than the fact that I've stated that Kairi, I think, is extremely beautiful, plus I like her personality. Heck, everything about her I think is sexy, and she's very intelligent. I've said before that I think she looks exactly like Ivy, the character from the PS2 game, the PlayStation 2 game, Soul Calibur 2. It's a fighting game with swords and stuff. This character's got like a sword whip, kind of like Renji from Bleach, the anime. That being said, I think she looks a lot like Ivy from Soul Calibur 2. But now, I'm looking at her, I just realized something. She looks like the female version, aged up of course, of Kaoru Nagisa from Evangelion. She looks like Kaoru from Evangelion. Except, you know, boobs. It's okay, Rosa-san. Tell us at your own pace. Thank you. It was a day I'd been harshly scolded by Mother. I don't know why that just made me think of the song Fade to Black by Metallica. Even though my tutor had promised to keep it a secret, apparently they told Mother all about how I had complained. Mother scolded me brutally, saying my name was a disgrace to the Ushiromiya family. Of course, I was doing the best I could. but I had none of Kraus Nissan's dignity. I couldn't get excellent grades like Eva Nissan, and I had no leadership abilities like Rudolf Nissan. I never stood out, didn't particularly excel at anything, and I found myself asking why I'd even been born into the Ushiromiya family. I began to question more and more why I'd even been born at all. This is what happened on the day I experienced my mind going blank for the first time. Is Rosa actually Beatrice's daughter? For the first time in my life, I realized that in addition to facing or surrendering to my problems, I had the third choice of running away. What if Beatrice is actually the father of Maria? Like, what if the blue-haired Beatrice from the start of the game that we saw in a flashback of Beatrice's was the actual Beatrice that committed suicide? And the Beatrice in that situation didn't kill herself until the daughter she had with Kenzo was so Kenzo had two wives. He had the wife whose name I don't remember. That's, Battler's maternal grandmother. And, the mother of Kraus, Rudolph, and Ava. But what if Kenzo first child that he had with the original Beatrice with the blue hair, and he kept that Beatrice, and that's why there's that flashback, like, where we assume it's 1,000 years ago, of Beatrice talking about how grandfather's going to scold me over the vase. And it could be Beatrice's could be misremembering this due to PTSD issues, because this is a really fucked up backstory. And then this woman's living in this hidden mansion with the daughter she's had by Kenzo, and probably when this daughter was still very young, but, old enough to be like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 or something. The mom just couldn't handle it anymore, either killed herself or, like I think I said in the Kenzo Saint video, like what if, because Kenzo's actual wife died around that time too, if I believe, so I think Kenzo's wife came across Beatrice, killed the woman Beatrice, and then Kenzo probably flew into a rage and killed his own wife then, and then buried them both underneath the chapel. But at that point, the daughter of Beatrice, who he also named Beatrice, was then, still raised in the mansion by herself. And Renove and all of these other, spirits, so to say, were the servants working in the hidden mansion under Kenzo to take care of Beatrice when she was a child. And then Kenzo raised that child until she was of a certain age, at which point I feel like there's a game that Markiplier Let's Played once about something about, like it's something like there's some end of the world type of situation, but it's just a kid locked up in a house, and it's like, oh, my belly's big. And then Beatrice gave birth to Rosa, her own actual daughter. Probably from the earliest age that would be physically possible for a person to become pregnant. Then Rosa, the actual daughter of the second Beatrice, the one that we're seeing in the game, encountered her mother, accidentally killed her in some way, suppressed it due to PTSD issues, and now, at this point, the Beatrice we're encountering isn't a witch, but a vengeful ghost, supported by Renove, the butler who worked in the other mansion, who are also vengeful ghosts. Obviously, there's probably some ways in which I'm wrong about this, but this is a way of interpreting this. That being said, If even half of that's true, Kenzo's a monster. For the first time in my life, I realized that in addition to facing or surrendering to my problems, I had the third choice of running away. Though I say run away, there was no way I could have left Rockinjima and gone elsewhere. But anyway, I wanted to run away from the mansion and my own self at the same time. In a way, it was like a kid running away from home, or maybe a passive sort of suicide. I wanted to disappear, or maybe it was that childlike form of resistance where I tried to make my parents worry by disappearing me. I childishly thought that if I went into the center of the forest, escaped from the Ushiromiya house, and maybe became lost, then maybe I'd make them worry and teach them a lesson. And then you went into the forest that you were told never to enter? Yes. After reaching the beach, I followed alongside the ocean. I didn't have any particular reason, but I felt that if I went around to the opposite side of the island, there might be a place there that no one knew about, which might become a hidden house just for me. If you go around by the beach, that'd be impossible. It becomes a cliff part way, right? There's no way you could pass that way. Of course. So I kept going wherever I could, which kept taking me deeper and deeper inland. It's a horrible forest without any paths, but that was comforting to me then. If I could make it through such a dangerous forest, then I'd be that much further away from the Ushiromiya family. How shameful. If you were scolded because of your grades, all you had to do was work harder. You mustn't say that. Doesn't Rosa have her talent as a designer instead? Literally speaking, he was covering for Rosa, but everyone knew that Rosa's company hadn't been profitable. Quit it. This is not the time for sarcasm. So you managed to end up there by coincidence, at Beatrice's hidden mansion. Rosa nodded weakly. About how far did you walk? Could you show it to us on a map? Not Sui-san, do you have a map of this island? No, there isn't one here now. It wouldn't help. I was just walking randomly. Even if you gave me a map, I wouldn't know. And 20 years have passed since then. I probably couldn't reach it again even if I went into the forest. Several people let out dejected sighs. Also, there's a typhoon. It was vividly clear that in their haste they'd thought some hint related to the witch's epitaph, or maybe even the gold itself might be resting there. On Rockinjima, only the land around the mansion is ready to be developed on. The rest is completely uncultivated, and it'd probably take a lot of work to survey the entire island. But just knowing that it actually exists is helpful. It would take some money, but if we enlisted an aerial photography company to investigate, or asked the businessmen who constructed this mansion about what happened, they're probably all dead. At that time, we could probably find some way to research for it. That's right. At least we have more options now, as opposed to when we weren't sure it existed. Indeed. It may be worth investigating right away. The siblings will do that investigation together. We won't leave you on your own, Nissan. It wasn't yet certain that the gold was hidden in that secret mansion, but the sparks seemed to have started flying between Kraus and Ava already. I mean, it would make sense for it to be hidden there. Give it a rest for now, you two. Rosa, please continue. Yes. Okay. Blindly, randomly, I kept running on and on. Suddenly, I came across something I thought was an animal trail. I was very tired, had no idea how far I'd walked, so at that time, I naturally took the easiest path. Probably the path Kenzo walks to get there. As I did, suddenly right before my eyes, a very, very tall fence appeared. It was a fence wonderfully adorned in a Gothic style. For an instant, I thought I'd gotten turned around and returned to the original mansion. Of course, there were fences around the mansion to stop us from entering the forest, but this fence was decorated differently, and moreover, it was very tall. It probably reached a full 2 stories up. It really did make a fucking birdcage. Jesus. It was covered with ivy. and created a mysterious, solemn atmosphere. At the time, I believed in the legend of the Witch of the Forest, Beatrice. I had been told that she was frightening, but some of the servants told me that she'd sometimes help you if you respected her. Since I had little confidence in those days, I believed the only way I could be saved was by receiving her help. That's why I thought what I did. I believed that this was the fence of the mansion belonging to Beatrice, the Witch of the Forest. I thought that if I could meet with Beatrice, she'd definitely save me. So I decided to try going in. But the fence was very, very tall, and it didn't look like I'd be able to go over it. So I chose to walk around it. I thought that if I did, I'd eventually reach a gate. But it wasn't that easy. The fence had an incredible length to match its incredible height, and no matter how far I went, I didn't reach a corner. It might have encircled a massive area, or maybe I just had the impression because my child's legs made it difficult to walk in the forest. Anyway, I couldn't find a gate for a while, and I started to feel sad as though the witch had rejected me. As I did, I eventually came upon a large tree whose twisted root had bent the fence. It might get my clothes dirty, but if I crawled, it looked like I'd be able to sneak in. And there you found the hidden mansion. I don't know if it was the hidden mansion we've been talking about. How many hidden mansions could there be? Still, at the very least, it wasn't a place that we know of. Welcome to Rock and Dreamer, the house of 1,000 hidden mansions. They're all haunted, by the way. It wasn't as though I came out into a garden as soon as I passed the fence. I had to continue through a lot more uncultivated forest after that. As I did, the forest suddenly opened up, and what appeared there was an unbelievably fantastical scene. To think that on Rock and Dream, where I thought only we lived, there could be such a wonderful mansion hidden away. A beautiful flower garden spanned the front of the mansion. It was a flower garden of completely different design from the rose garden we know so well, and it was very lovely. Of course, the mansion was also wonderful. It was a couple sizes smaller than ours, but it was still elegant and adorable at the same time. Then I saw her figure. I saw her sitting in a garden chair, positioned to give a view of the flower garden, wearing an elegant dress. It was the black dress embroidered in gold that we would later know from the portrait. I hadn't seen an elegant dress like that, except in fairy tales and on the stage of musicals. For a person to be wearing it as her normal clothes, that in itself seemed quite fantastical. You know, if anime had existed back then, Kenzo would probably like, here you go, Beatrice, here's a Hatsune Mikune cosplay. That mysterious scene was enough to make me lose my sense of reality. You just walk in and it's like, what's that? Well, Beatrice is now dressed as Shy Lily, the VTuber. If someone had told me that it was a dream, I might have nodded obediently and waited to wake up in my bed. I had forgotten to hide myself in my shock, so she eventually spotted me. At first her expression was quite listless, but when she noticed me, her eyes opened very wide. It was only natural considering that a guest she didn't know had suddenly appeared. I lowered my head automatically, planning to greet her and apologize for entering without permission. Who are you? The new gardener? Those were the first words she said to me. I grew slightly calmer, because I realized that we could talk to each other. Because I hadn't been turned into a frog just by meeting her eyes, like a terrifying witch in a fairy tale. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have entered the garden without permission. Who are you? Name yourself. I am Ushiromia Rosa. Ushiromia. Ho. One of Kinzo's family. Huh? Yes. I'm Kinzo's daughter. Good afternoon. I was a little surprised. After all, father was a great man, feared by everyone, and yet she had spoken to him without using honorifics. So I was immediately terrified of her. After all, if she could refer to my fearsome father that way, she must be a witch with incredible power. After staring at me curiously, she beckoned me to come over. Frightened as I was, I obeyed. After all, I thought she might really turn me into a frog. The closer I got, the stronger that fear became. After all, as I keep saying over and over, that woman in her dress in the flower garden in the mansion. That whole picture was so fantastical and beautiful that it seemed separate from reality. It probably wouldn't have surprised me at all to learn that she really was a witch. And I really was lucky. She hadn't turned me into a frog. As I awkwardly stood there, stock still, she motioned to an open chair and urged me to sit down, have a seat, welcoming and speaking to those who visit this garden for the first time is my sole pleasure. Of course, I have no pleasures other than that. As she said that, she let an unhappy smile show for just an instant. Because I was full of a strange mix of tension and excitement, I rudely asked her a question all of a sudden. Are you the witch of the forest, Beatrice? Indeed, I am Beatrice. So did Beatrice herself get gaslit by the fucking stories Kinzo told everyone else? As I thought, Beatrice actually existed. Did she really look like the portrait? Yes, really just like the portrait. So, she wasn't just a witch from Father's imagination. Well, what did you talk with her about? As she prepared some tea, she asked me all kinds of things about myself. First, she was surprised that I had come through the forest. It seems she believed that many dangerous wolves lived outside the fence. So I told her that I'd come through the forest to reach this place. She was shocked. She asked how I had managed to escape from the wolves. Okay, I'm pretty sure wolves are not native to Japan, unless someone eventually, takes them on a fucking boat over there. Like, horses weren't initially native to North America or South America. They are from Europe, Africa, and all those places. Technically, donkeys, zebras, and stuff technically a horse can be domesticated, but a zebra cannot. Donkeys and mules are closer to horses, but also less in terms of how domesticated they can be. Heck, cheetahs are like big kitty cats. They're still dangerous, but for the most part, they act like a house cat. Still wouldn't recommend having one as a pet, even if you're rich. That being said, lions, mountain lions, well, technically there have been times where they've gotten along with humans. They are much more less tame, more likely to be violent. And obviously there's wolves, coyotes, and animals similar to that. I think Australia has dingoes. But main point being, for the most part, wolves and grizzly bears are not a thing that's in Japan. Heck, I don't even know what would happen if you suddenly introduced a bunch of wolves into the forests of Japan. If there would even be enough food for them to eat. Did I give them a biscuit and they let me go? Or did I cover myself in a magic cloak? That kind of thing. Wah, that sure sounds like a witch. What an interesting person. Quiet, dear. This goes way back. But didn't Father threaten us, saying we should never get near the forest because of the wolves that lived there? Yes, he did say something of the sort. Ridiculous. Even though Japanese wolves went extinct long ago. Truly a trick to fool children. I don't remember, though. Did Dad really tell us something like that? It was the witch of the forest, right? I don't think I've ever heard about wolves. This was when you were still in elementary school. Don't you remember? Back then you actually said you thought it'd be cool to try petting the wolves. Father immediately gave up the wolf story and changed it to the story about the witch. Seriously, what transparent lies they were. Ha 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 ha. Ah ha ha ha. At the time, the witch story had a much more immediate effect on you, Rudolph, than the wolves. I remember it well. Don't you remember those nights when you clung to my back? Giggle. I see, so even Rudolph-san used to be that cute. Shut up. I was just a kid. Well, at any rate, if Father is the one who shut Beatrice up in there, it makes sense that he'd use the same story about wolves. To him, the vast forest of Rokkenjima was a wall that shouldn't be crossed, dividing his two incompatible worlds, the Ushiromiya family and his mistress's mansion. Considering the height of that fence, it does sound as though Father turned that whole area, garden and all, into a giant jail cell, just like a border dividing his two separate worlds. Wolves aside, could there have been some breed of stray dogs there at the time? Perhaps the fence was there to protect against those. I feel like you're trying really hard to defend Kenzo. There aren't any wolves or stray dogs in Rokkenjima. That fence was probably a border between us and Beatrice. But if she innocently believed that story about the wolves, that's pretty naive. That's nothing like what I'd expect a witch to do. You're right. I sensed that too. She was very pompous, just like my image of a witch. Actually, I would say the traits of being naive and pompous sound like a spoiled child. A child who hasn't been... A child that's extremely spoiled, but also extremely sheltered, and used to getting their way on a lot of things except a few things. Like, when it comes right down to it, Beatrice doesn't do anything that, air quotes, builds character. She's not really learning or studying or working or anything like that. Nor is she having actual, real, proper interactions with other people. And even though she can't have her way on literally everything, such as being able to leave, Kenzo does treat her basically as he's willing to basically give her anything she wants that's within his power to give her, and basically anything she can say she wants, she can do. So, obviously a lot of fucked up shit going on every way. I'm just saying, like, think of the Willy Wonka movie. That one girl with the golden egg goose. That kind of personality. Like, the person, very pompous, but also very naive. But she was somehow very childish. She was, how should I put it, too straightforward. She gave me the impression that she didn't know anything about the world. It was as though she'd come from some fairy tale land. She really was a strange person. What happened after all that? And I guess the amnesia thing she's having is like the PTSD of, you know, probably like Oscar Langley. Like, it might have been a thing like that, like how Oscar's mom basically hung herself and was going to like threaten to hang Oscar too, but then hung like a doll instead. What happened after that? Did you end up talking about Dad at all? Yes. Once every few days, usually on an arranged day. But sometimes suddenly, Father would casually appear and they'd drink together or else take a walk together or something. She said she just happened to be alone on the day I visited. I see. An obvious mistress, you might say. My. I don't know how much younger she was, but good for Father. We can be sure this was no indecent relationship. Idiot, there's no way a lover's meeting between a man and a woman wouldn't have some sensuality. What happened next? What did you talk about after that? That's the other thing, like, Beatrice herself seems to, like, regard lust and love as equivalent. And granted, yes, sex and intimacy is part of romance. You know, there's a difference between just carnal-based lust and actually having loving intimacy and, you know, emotional love and care for another person. It's about mutual trust and respect. And I could say I can understand where Beatrice is coming from, because even though Kenzo basically puts her up on a fucking pedestal, albeit a caged pedestal, he both is an overly controlling asshole and a simp. And any kind of healthy relationship that actually consists of love should have mutual respect and mutual trust. And I don't think that existed in this circumstance. I'd already introduced myself, so I asked about her. When I did, the atmosphere quickly grew depressing. How should I put it? She seemed to grow listless and lonely. It was the same expression I saw on her face in the beginning. Well, she was his hidden mistress, after all. If she just walked around wherever she liked, Mom might have found her. I'll bet she was practically under house arrest. Even though she had been a beautiful clothes and a beautiful mansion and a garden, she must have felt pretty cramped. I mean, at the end of the day, is a prison any less of a prison if it's comfortable? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not allowed to leave. How about she had it rough? And then, she was definitely worried about something. I remember feeling really sad myself when I realized it wasn't something I could do anything about by talking to her. She seemed to forget I was even there. She gazed vaguely off into the distance and was silent for a long, long time. I thought I must have said something wrong, but it didn't seem to be the type of atmosphere where I could apologize. So I remained silent, too, for a long time, long time, until she remembered I was there. I mean, it sounds like the attitude I would have taken to as a child as well. Like, basically, it's like, well, I'm just going to stay quiet. And then she muttered unexpectedly. Are there really no wolves beyond the fence? Huh? Yes, that's right. I've never seen wolves, not even in a zoo. What is a zoo? It's a place where they keep all kinds of animals. They're full of rare animals like elephants and giraffes and pandas. You don't know what those are, do you? I will say this. I like going to the zoo. Granted, I'm of the opinion that zoos are good, but I also have the opinion that any zoo that has animals should treat the animals well. The animals should be treated well, and they should have plenty of space so that they do not feel trapped. That being said, I certainly wouldn't espouse the idea of having a zoo for humans. Heck, even if there was certainly a place somewhere that I would say that humans are capable. I would say if there's a place where humans should be on exhibit at some point, then it should be voluntary on their part and they should be paid and then should be comfortable and then just basically go there like, it's like your shift at work. Like you can go work at a factory or you can go like, hey, I'm going to go stand here for a bit and just have conversations with space aliens. And then at the end of my shift, I just go back to my home that's outside the zoo. We take shifts like, today, Lunar the human is here. He's here for 4 hours today. And then he's going to fly to Jupiter or something before returning to the Earth at like 20 times light speed. But I mean, it's a mix of confusion and wonder and astonishment. Heck, it kind of makes you think about the concept of, in the Bible, they say the fear of God. But like the fear of God, like obviously you should love God, but the fear of God's more about, it's not about being terrified of him or blind obedience, though it is obviously a reverence for the power you'd have and, a desire to obey and do the right thing. But it's not supposed to be about like you're fucking terrified of him or he's like some abusive parent in the sky. More so a reverence, awe and respect. But not, like terror and dread. But I'd say the look on her face might be a mix of confusion and wonder, like, what are those things? But also a desire, like, hey, I'd like to go to a zoo. I'd like to see those things. Heck, imagine this is like the face Beatrice would make if, like, Kenzo showed up, like, hey, here's a Sonic the Hedgehog 3 you get to play. So, there aren't any wolves in a zoo. Then it might not be too scary. It might not be so scary. It might not be so scary. Even if there were wolves, all of the animals are put in cages, so it's safe. On the one hand, you can definitely tell a bit of naivete. Like, she's like, oh, the fact that she's showing that she has, like, different range of emotions makes someone more human. The fact that she has confusion, wonder, awe, and even the fact that there's things that she's afraid of, that she's worried about somewhere being safe and dangerous. The fact that she's staying there because she's worried about wolves. Well, that does lead to it makes her more human. However, the fact is this. The animals are put in cages. She's probably going to, like, that's probably going to make her think a bit of herself. That's why you can safely look at them and learn about them. The mighty witch of the forest is apparently terrified of wolves. Okay, so So far, we've learned that she's scared of wolves, scorpions, and spiders and spider webs. But yeah, I do agree that, one, I think zoos are fun. I think they're exciting. I think they're good. I think they're a good thing to go to do. I think they're a good thing to do with family and friends, or anyone you care about. I think it's a good bonding experience with people that are valuable to you in your life. And it's about enjoying the experience, and them enjoying the experience, and enjoying the experience together. Plus, you do get to learn about the animals. Plus, I think an important thing is that I think it helps humanity, both on individually, families, as well as society. Because I think humans would be more callous in regards to animals than they already are if we didn't have zoos. They would just be like, oh, those are those things we see in books, and that become our food in a grocery store. But actually seeing them as living, breathing things, I think also instills in people a love for nature and empathy toward animals. And like I said, I think zoos and aquariums are great and amazing and good and necessary. But I think it's only in the condition that the animals are well taken care of. The animals at no point should be mistreated or abused, nor should they be in a small cage where they actually feel confined. They should feel like they have plenty of space to where they don't feel like they're caged. They should also have plenty of stimulation so that they can make the most of the intelligence that they have. And I would certainly say a human in this situation, while there's certainly nothing bad about having this place for her to go to, like, there's certainly nothing bad about Beatrice having this place to call us home, but I would certainly say that she should have, one, more entertainments available in this place, whether they be books, as well as she should be able to come and go freely from this place. It shouldn't feel like a place that she's not allowed to leave. It shouldn't be like a place where she feels hidden. It should feel like a sanctuary. It should feel like a place where she has all the room to play and to be happy and just rest, in a place that's safe for her, and a place that she should feel welcome. And it should also feel like a place that she should always be welcome to come back to at any time, that's always there for her. But she should also feel that she should be able to have other people over to visit. She should be able to talk about other people. She should be able to, heck, imagine like what if she was like a streamer or something, but she should be able to like go on trips. Heck, at this point, Kenzo, like, why not just have two wives? I mean, it was a pretty common thing in the past for people in the past that were rich. And just have her be like, this is Aunt Beatrice, everyone. And then basically treat Beatrice and Kenzo's actual wife as sisters, I guess. I mean, that works for the Mormons and a lot of people in the past, I guess. I mean, it's a lot healthier than what's happening here. Then again, Kenzo does not seem like a very, I don't know, respectful of other people's autonomy type person. Whether it be his wives or his children or his grandchildren or his servants or humanity in general. Just saying, I feel like Kenzo's not a good person. Yes, he has his own backstory and stuff too. But, I'm just saying this. In of itself, this isn't a bad deal for Beatrice, except for the whole not being allowed to leave. Also possibly being the rape child of the original Beatrice with the blue hair. And that Rosa might actually be Beatrice's also child that she had back when she was like 14 and then didn't know about. Because I guess trauma and drugs, I guess. I don't know. Just saying. I'm questioning a lot of ethical decisions that Kenzo has made, and I feel that he is not a good person. Main point is that in of itself, it's not bad that she has this big place and all that, but it's like, I feel like not only could he use have more amenities, especially since it's the fucking 80s, like, you don't even have Super Nintendos yet. They haven't been invented. But I think the big thing is, like, she's being hidden away, like, she's something to be ashamed of, and Also, just that she can't come and go freely. She can't have other people over. And she can't just, like, go anywhere she wants. Now, I can understand if it was an issue like Ken's was like, yeah, I can't really afford for us to go to the mainland all the time. But money is obviously not an issue. I can understand if, like, Kenzo was like, yeah, it's like, I spent all my money on this, and he's stuck there too. But at this point, in terms of, then again, I mean, it could also be different personality types. Granted, this is not me making an excuse for Kenzo, but more so saying this. Kenzo locked her up in a giant bird cage. And yet he spent the last few years of his life, albeit probably hiding from magical superpowers that were probably rightly coming back to get vengeance. That being said, he did kind of lock himself up in a small prison himself. I'm just saying there's questions of the isolation on both people, human interactions, also like how much of an education or things were available to Beatrice. Like how much human experience, how much... It's not like they're going to go out and watch the Terminator movie when it comes out. Like, yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger on the big screen. It's not like they're going to... So yeah. I remember it looked pretty funny to me at the time. How am I any different? Huh? She didn't know about zoos. I explained how fun zoos could be, but it was very difficult for a person like her, who had never visited one, to understand. On the contrary, as I explained it to her, her expression grew increasingly dismal. She couldn't see the difference. Apparently, even though she lived in an elegant mansion that was surrounded by a high fence and seemed to lack for nothing, she couldn't see how she was any different from animals shut up in cages. Who am I? Everyone calls me Beatrice, and that does indeed seem to be the name of a great witch, as you say. But that isn't me. Do you have imposter syndrome? Obviously, a lot of gaslighting and manipulation on part of Kenzo's part, and still, that's... I would say I'd feel bad for you, except for all the, the murdering you do. It's kind of like saying Hannibal Lecter. It's like, yeah, he's got a tragic backstory, like, I feel bad for him, that's awful. Still doesn't excuse the rampant murders and cannibalism. Grantedly, he usually tends to go after people that are... he considers bad for society or bad people. Though he seems to also break that rules a lot when it comes to escaping or just his own interest. It's kind of like saying, like Venom from Spider-Man. Like, I'm going to only eat the bad humans, like the Tom Hardy Venom. But, occasionally, like, that human's a good person, but they smell delicious. Then again, it's the kind of thing I said about the Death Note. Like, Light Yagami's dad said to Light when he was dying that, it's like, I'm glad you never used the Death Note. Death Note's a curse. Having such a thing corrupts a person. And I would certainly say that the personality, like, yes, she is a bit naive and pompous here, but again, how could she not be? She's treated like an overly sheltered, locked up, isolated, spoiled child. Yes, she's treated like a spoiled child, but she's also very much isolated, sheltered, and robbed of a lot of things that would, allow her to grow or develop as a person. Heck, there was things in, like, Holocaust is pretty famous for, like, a lot of those death camps where people were, like, starved near to death. But both that, and there was also places in war-torn areas where, like, there were orphanages where kids were just sort of kept in cages. Both in, like, Germany and Russia and places like that, because he's, considered cheaper. But most of those kids didn't actually grow through puberty very well. Their body refused to produce the chemicals needed. And for the most part, they basically grew up to be retarded. Or their body didn't develop right. Their mind and their body didn't develop correctly. Heck, there's situations in every culture in the world where there's people that have overly, like, there are stories of people that have kept, like there was one story I remember there being of a father, like, back in, like, the 80s, who, like, kept, granted it had been since, like, the 60s or something, but he had kept a daughter or something locked up in a room the whole time, couldn't even look out the window or anything, and she was physically 17 years old, but she still had the mental state of, like, a fucking 2-year-old. Obviously, we're going to, like, severe situations of abuse that go, like, almost sound worse than the fucking Holocaust. But the point being is that, generally speaking, even if you were to give a human all of the nutritional needs they need, if you were to either overly isolate them or lock them up in, like, a cage, or especially during formative years when they're a child, well, basically, if you have someone who's very young and you don't let them have other human interaction and you don't let them learn and you just sort of keep them isolated from the world, it causes severe mental problems, both in terms of intelligence, in terms of emotional regulation, even maturity. Like, they can't grow and understand. And of course, in the long term, whether it be actual traumatic things, in terms of technically both are traumatic, but I'm talking more the difference between abuse and neglect, though both of these are two extremes. The main point is that any amount of abuse and neglect will cause issues physically and psychologically for an individual. And as you increase the severity of that stuff, well, it increases the severity of the complications. So yes, I would say this. Like, Hannibal Lecter. Bad shit happened. And yes, a lot of times he's like, oh, there's an epidemic of rude people, and he's like, sort of thing now, but also at the same time, it's just a lot of the characters, like, heck, if you look at people like Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, even stories from, like, most, because, I mean, look at Beatrice. Yeah, she's a bit of a naive, pompous child. She's basically, on the one hand, a spoiled child, but also very isolated. I would say in this situation, Beatrice is both an extremely spoiled and pampered child, but she's also extremely isolated, neglected, and abused. Heck, at this point, I wouldn't even be unexpected to me if, like, there were situations that Kenzo was either forcing himself on her or physically hurting her. Obviously, those would be much worse than things already are. But even if he's not doing those things, there's still abuse going on here. So, I would say, between both being a extremely spoiled, pompous, uneducated child who is basically treated as a pedestalized individual, and as if they're basically, you know, more important than everyone else in the world. Because even though Kenzo treats her as a prisoner, he also treats her as the most he basically treats her as, like, his treasured property. And again, a healthy relationship isn't supposed to be about that sort of stuff. A healthy relationship is both people, you know, respecting each other as equals. But yeah. The question is, how bad was Kenzo when it came to things? The answer is, I don't know. Maybe the author left this to interpretation. We're in episode 3. I don't know how much is going to be revealed, and maybe certain things will be left vague. I don't know. But, main point being is, on the one hand, she is a pampered, spoiled, ignorant child who thinks of herself as more important than everyone else in the world. On the other hand, she's a very isolated, overly sheltered, very neglected and abused individual. So one could say, oh, especially when given absolute power as the endless bitch, endless witch, the endless cunt. I'm just saying this. Power in itself, sometimes, like, power in itself isn't bad. And it's good to have power, especially to defend yourself or do good things with. The question is when you start crossing certain lines and boundaries. And of course, there could always be certain exceptions that make it permissible to do so. But then the question is, well, do you then cross that line again easier the next time it comes up? Like, I feel like it's an issue of, it's not bad to have power, and it's not bad to use power. But I think it might be a constant struggle for anyone who does have power to use it in a responsible way, and to use it in a way that the person they were when they very first got that power wouldn't disagree with how they used it. For example, if you could take Abraham Lincoln at the very end of his presidency, at the morning of that day, having no knowledge of how much longer his presidency will last, or that he'll be assassinated or anything. And you have the Abraham Lincoln that started his presidential term, as well as the Abraham Lincoln that he was back many years before he became president. And granted, none of them know about the assassination or how long it goes after that. But the question is, would each one of them be okay with how things went? And I think at every step, Abraham Lincoln would be proud and happy with the life he led. Though, I don't know how his feelings would change knowing about how his death would be, being shot in the back of the head in a, I would say movie theater, but technically electricity. It's a play, it's a theater. Shakespeare was movies of the past. I still think it's interesting that if you took Shakespeare, not only would you not understand modern English, but Shakespeare would have a better chance to understand modern English than the initial English where English started as a language. Like the old English from when it started, Shakespeare wouldn't understand that. Then there's plus all the dialects and accents that have come over the years. Heck, I know George Washington has many stories about. One is about he's considered the bulletproof president. That before he was president, when he was fighting especially a lot of enemy troops, heck, there was even times where there was groups of Native Americans who came against him and tried shooting him with a bunch of guns. And some of them bragged about how they were the great marksmen and very skilled with it. And yet, there was an Indian chief who came to meet President George Washington when they were both close to dying of old age, say he wanted to see the man that, hey, I tried to shoot you myself 17 times. And like there were stories like parts of George Washington's hair was, singed, or he had bullet holes in his jackets, or so many times the bullets hit his horse instead. But like he'd been shot at like hundreds of times by people that were certain they would get kill shot, and yet he would be unharmed. And yet he died of like pneumonia and old age. Granted, they wanted him to run for a second term, but he didn't want to run for one term. He just hey, I did what I needed to do. I'd rather just leave things in everyone else's hand. I just want to enjoy my retirement. No, then he died of pneumonia, and back then medical practices were pretty shitty. To the point that even though he was the former president of the United States of America, and had pretty much access to the best doctor, they were still treating him like with Greek medicine, like the idea of the humors. So basically he had pneumonia. So they gave him medicine that would cause him to vomit and have horrible diarrhea. He died of an old person disease with terrible medicine. Had he been alive nowadays, he probably would have lived a much better life. Then again, a lot of people died of preventable illnesses all the time back then. And there's a reason why it wasn't until around the 1800s that the human race didn't hit 1, maybe 2 billion people. I think 1 billion people. Heck, if I remember right, we only had, at the time of Jesus, there were only 170 million people on the planet. And again, it's kind of hard to estimate that given the time back then. But from our understanding, at the time of Jesus' death, There are only 170 million people on the entire planet. Heck, the past 100 years, we kind of shot up in numbers. Mainly because we have better medicine and better food. But we're also about to have a major population collapse, so our infrastructure won't be able to handle anything, and we'll probably all die. So, that's awful. But nothing I can do about that, other than just, I don't know, read a video game, I guess. Heck, Andrew Jackson got shot a whole bunch. They couldn't even take the bullets out. It said that his body rattled as he walked. Like you could hear the bullets rolling around inside his body, rattling like a fucking maraca as he just walked around. Heck, there was a point where like someone tried to assassinate him. They came out and just shot him with a gun. And then after that, Andrew Jackson just took out his cane and just beat the dude to death. Just started like beating him. Like, oh, you shot me? Heck, Teddy Roosevelt. He gave a speech. Heck, people liked him being in the military. You know why? Most people will say their soldiers following him say, hey, charge. Instead, Teddy Roosevelt would be like, he'd hop on a horse in front and be like, hey guys, follow me. And he'd be the first one, the very front of the front lines. He said, hey, follow me. And he'd run off into combat telling people to follow behind him and follow his lead. Heck, there was a point where he was giving a speech. Heck, I think he was already sick to begin with. And he was like, fuck pneumonia. I'm gonna fucking give a speech anyway. In the fucking winter. Outside. And then someone came and fucking shot him. And after the person's like, okay guys, not to alarm you, but just to inform you, I appear to have been shot. And then he continued for another hour. Plus, giving a speech. I think he was the grandfather of FDR? I can't remember. I can't remember if they were directly related. I cannot use any magic. I simply have the soul of that witch sealed inside my body. There was definitely something odd about her. Beyond just being cut off from the world, it seemed she truly believed that magic exists. I think she talked about lots of weird things, but I don't remember the details. All I thought was that this might be a person to be pitied. She was unable to leave this mansion of her own free will, a prisoner without even realizing it. And she didn't know anything about the outside world, didn't even understand who she was. She was probably vaguely realized that she has to be pitied. But since she didn't know anything, she seemed incapable of recognizing her own unhappiness. Long ago, when I told Nason that I felt sorry for a bird in a cage, she said this: a bird that only knows about the inside of the cage doesn't long for the outside. But this wasn't a bird. She really was a person. Even if she'd never been outside the cage, she understood that there was more to the world. So, I invited her. Do you want to try going outside the fence? There really aren't any wolves? And I'll say this. The fact that she can have expressions and emotions like this does lend to, that she isn't a fucking psychopath. And obviously, yes, there are people who don't have emotions, who can fake having emotions for the sake of like manipulating people. But obviously, again, that isn't the impression I'm getting here. I'm getting that her feelings are sincere. In fact, I would say a lot of, air quotes, faked feelings that people do, especially people that aren't psychopaths, are really survival responses that have come from trauma. Basically, a person putting a shell around themselves or a wall around themselves. Heck, take me, for instance. A lot of times when I'm in public, I tend to be very stoic. I tend not to really express emotions. And I tend to smile and be very friendly with everyone. Partly because I like being friendly with people, and I don't like being rude. I value politeness. But also because, let's be clear, a lot of the things and feelings that I have, well, they're very special to me. And I do feel difficulty opening up on certain things. And in general, most people out there really would not give a fuck about what my thoughts and feelings are, and many personal issues of mine are very personal. and they're not things that I would trust with just anybody. That being said, I do talk a lot more frankly and openly with, well, this channel. This channel, after all, is a place for me to basically sort of just be myself and just talk however I want. Basically, I think in the autistic sense, it would be considered masking. Again, I don't really know if I really am autistic, but I do take a lot of online tests about that stuff, about autism, depression, borderline personality disorder, and ADHD, and I seem to pass all of those with flying colors. Almost get like perfect fucking scores. So, but apparently, people that do have autism, and of course there's many different forms of it, and of course most of what you see in movies isn't actually how it is. And again, there's probably various extremes, and who knows, maybe it could always be some other mental health condition that's appearing like something else. Who knows? Self-diagnosis is not exactly the most reliable form of anything. But I can certainly see some similarities. And when it comes right down to it is this. Apparently there are people who do have autism that don't even know they have autism, and whether they be people that are aware of it or not aware of having autism, there's a thing called masking where people learn to understand that there's certain personality quirks or eccentricities that they have that are not considered socially acceptable, or they seem to get punished for. So you learn to behave in a certain way. In the same way, many people who are depressed or have things on their mind that make them very sad or angry tend to use smiles, laughter, humor, even sometimes dark humor, as a way of masking that, their own emotional pain, as well as being able to be more friendly with other people. After all, I'll say this. I've probably cried thousands and thousands of times over the course of my life. Many times during the course of videos. Heck, there was one video I did that was 13.5 hours long where I cried for like at least 7 hours straight. I was crying, laughing, and screaming. I was laughing at screaming volumes. I was crying at screaming volumes. And heck, eventually got to the point that human bodies apparently have a limit to how much stress they can handle. So eventually I became so, I guess the stress was too much for my body to handle, letting myself express that emotion so earnestly that I just started vomiting and shaking a lot, and getting dizzy. So, which that was a bit to clean up afterward, as there was just vomit everywhere, and I was extremely exhausted. But hey, that was like 4 years ago or some shit when I was making that video. But main point being, a lot of people will smile and laugh and be friendly as a way of hiding their own emotional issues. Like if they're sad or angry or scared of something, or just very nervous or anxious, or even a panic attack. But the main point is this. A lot of people tend not to be very open with their emotions, and they tend to use things like smiling or being stoic as a way of masking those emotions, and after all, it's usually considered stoicism itself and self-control. Heck, there's a large degree that people in real life have considered me like a robot. They seem to don't think I have feelings or emotions. But I actually have a lot of feelings and emotions, and they're very strong feelings and emotions. But they're also very personal, and obviously I don't want to cry in front of other people. That's another thing when it comes to people interacting with other people. Like this. Obviously, she hasn't really learned to put up a wall or a barrier or a shell around her emotionally, because she hasn't had much interaction with people. As well as she's still in the moment of that, but in the future, not only does she have more experience with humans to be able to mask those emotions and to hide those innocent feelings such as this, but she also learns to realize that feeling emotions like this is painful. And so not only should she distance herself from those feelings in regards to other people as a way of, not exposing those feelings to other people who would be judgmental or look down on her for that, but also by being vulnerable like that, it would cause her pain to go back on her own issues like that. Now, that being said, the fact that she's expressing these emotions does make her more human, more open, more understandable. And I would say any person, whether it be family, friends, lovers, or just acquaintances, if you're somebody and you're being more expressive of emotions like this to somebody, well, you are getting to know them more and they're getting to know you more. Basically, let me close this update. Especially if you're talking with people that are friends or more than friends, being vulnerable around each other is a way of growing closer and more trusting of each other. Let me double check OBS. We have been recording. I need to try to keep it to half-hour-long videos. There really aren't any wolves. There aren't. You'll definitely be safe. I want to leave. But the gate is always closed. There's the place I came in through. It's got a crack you can slip through. If we go through there, will there be a world outside? You look genuinely happy. Do you get stuck underneath the crack because you're, an adult? Yes. There really aren't any wolves. Giggle. Right, there aren't any. And then a pack of wolves descended from the sky. Sky wolves. And then followed by spicy sky raisins. Like, those are bees. Those are bees. Those are not flying spicy raisins. I'd only planned on inviting her to go on a short walk, but she kept looking over her shoulder at the mansion, as though she was seriously worrying over the decision. Then I learned what she was preparing herself for. I have had enough of this place. I want to go outside. And I want to know who I am, what's happening in this world, and why I was born. I didn't know what her life had been like before then. It was probably something she couldn't express easily. If it was harsh, she just had to say she wanted to escape. If it was sweet, she just had to say she just had to stay. For example, maybe it was like how a hot fireplace on a winter day makes the air get thicker and thicker, giving you a headache. Even though you know you shouldn't keep things the way they are, you still need courage to open the window and be tormented by the cold wind. She was starting to realize that she couldn't stay there forever. I mean, whether it's Stockholm Syndrome, naivete, lack of experience, or just autism. I mean, autism is a thing, like, you don't like change. Heck, I'm pretty sure Maria and Battler have autism. I'm pretty sure everyone in this game has autism. Like, I'm pretty sure every single character in this entire game has autism. I'm pretty sure I have autism. I'm pretty sure anyone listening to this has autism. She was starting to realize that she had to go outside someday. But since she didn't know about the outside world, she must have needed courage to take that unspeakable first step outside. And despite that, she had made her decision. She voiced her decision to go outside, a decision she was probably been making for the first time in her life. I hesitated for a moment. Father had decided that she should live here. She was like Father's beloved bird in a cage. If I just let her escape, Father might scold me harshly. I want to see. See what? I want to see a zoo. And here's the thing. This seems like a childlike happiness and innocence that I think is a good thing for all humans to have. Heck, if there were like angels and aliens or AI or robots or whatever out there, whatever kind of bullshit I could possibly say, just saying, this would be an expression. Like, just, there's no evil, there's no malice here. It's just, hey, I'm going to go see a zoo. And again, I can understand how a lot of this stuff goes really bad, and after all, it's usually why a lot of vengeful ghosts have vengeful ghost issues, because they're, upset about things that were very unfair to them in life. That being said, doesn't make it fair to, like, just murder Scooby-Doo, Like, they had nothing to do. Heck, granted, these people actually were related to the people, but at the same time, and they have their own issues. But again, Also, what are you smoking? Like, what is this? Why are you always holding this? Is this like your wand hidden as a thing? Like, what are you smoking? Tobacco? Is it opium? Does Kenzo have you addicted to drugs? Is she actually healthy? Is she covered in bruises that are just covered with makeup? Aside from my own... I'm just saying this, like Hannibal Lecter. The start of that story, obviously Hannibal is the victim and is innocent. Heck, even at the situation where he goes back and murders all the people that initially caused the shit that went wrong with him, I think that's okay. The problem is when he starts just hunting random people. I mean, and again, even in the later movies where it's like, okay, there's sometimes people that are working for other bad people that are trying to kill him, that's fine. But it's just like, it's kind of like Light Yagami. It's like, okay, you killed the person who took a fucking elementary school hostage. Or the person who was like trying to rape some girl in public. Okay, that's fine. Obviously, I can't really condone, whoever's listening to this to go out and start killing people, but obviously, I can understand that, and I would have to say that in a situation where I also had a death note, I'd probably also use it to save the school children and the woman about being raped. It's like, if you walked into an alley and a woman's about to be raped, and the only way to save her is to shoot the dude. Well, I mean, it's still lamentable to have to shoot somebody, but I would shoot him to save the woman. And then I'd probably try to get her to a hospital. Though I'd probably have a little bit of a panic attack while trying to drive her there because, just shot somebody. And I'd be really upset about that. And honestly, people can say, oh, maybe over time you'd not be less not okay with it. The answer is I don't want to be less not okay with that. I don't want to be like in the future, like, yes, I eventually became okay with killing thousands of people. Like, no, I don't want to be that kind of person. Heck, I enjoy movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, violent video games like GTA, stories as written by like Edgar Allan Poe. But I also have lived my life to the best of my ability as a pacifist. Heck, I've only ever hurt anyone in self-defense. Heck, even in self-defense, I have never struck a woman. And I have never killed anyone. Ever. And I hope this world is as benevolent as possible to allow all of those things to stay true in the future. Heck, many of the people that went to World War I, World War II, especially the people that were drafted, I mean, most of them didn't have a choice in the matter. And even those that did, because many people lied about their age to go to World War II early because they wanted to fight the Nazis. But in that situation, again, you're fighting an enemy power that if you don't fight them, they're just going to come and kill everyone. So, heck, like, I'm a very strong supporter of gun rights. But I think guns should be predominantly used for things like self-defense. And if you do have a gun on you, you shouldn't use it as an excuse to be like talking shit to someone or provoking or instigating anything. I think you should always have a gun, but you should also do everything in your power to act as if you didn't have a gun. Heck, I think a gun should be treated like the fucking Dragon Balls from DBZ. That the ultimate dream of the Dragon Balls should be able to live a life to where you have the access to these magical wish-granting balls at any time, but you never have to use them. Same way with a gun. You should have the option to use it if you need it, but you should hopefully never have to. And usually people who do bad things use those things on people that are defenseless. So I'm not saying people should have guns to go out and hurt other people, but they should have it as a way to protect themselves and to protect others. Heck, I think a couple days ago there was like a either yesterday or something, there was like some shooting in like Sydney, Australia, I think, where there was like a big Hanukkah gathering, and some dude came and shot like a couple dozen people or something. I think there's 17, 18 people died. Like someone just brought a gun and just started shooting people at like some Hanukkah festival thing. But I'm like, maybe if some of the people there had guns, they could have shot back. And they could have, heck, if they knew the people there at the Hanukkah thing had guns, the person who brought the gun initially probably wouldn't have showed up in the first place to shoot anyone. Heck, there's also lots of things that are, like there's just people that are like every year that are just like going, like for this year and the previous year and the year before that, there's people that are just driving cars into groups of people at Christmas markets and Christmas parades, which is fucking awful. Heck, I'll tell you this, I'm a Christian, I believe in God. But I don't think, the laws should be based around Christianity. I think the laws should be based off logic and compassion and common sense. That being said, I love Christmas. And I like celebrating Christmas. And while I'm not somebody who celebrates Hanukkah, I think that's awesome that they have that and they do it. But I will say this, do have some disagreements, like my dad, technically stepdad, but I consider him my dad. Like here lately, past couple years, have been going on about how Christmas is a pagan holiday, Christmas and Easter are of the devil, and stuff like that. And it's just like a couple years ago, he printed out a six-page long thing on just the evils of Christmas, how Christmas is evil, and Easter's evil, and Sunday's not the real day of the Sabbath, and all that stuff. And I'm like, of all the things in the world, why are you focusing on this? Why? It's just, there's enough other bullshit going on, both in my personal life and in terms of society. There's no reason for you to focus on this and what's the logical conclusion of this? Should I get a gun and fucking shoot fucking Santa Claus at a mall? What the fuck are you expecting? And obviously I'm not advocating for anyone to do that. Jesus Christ, no. I'm just saying this. It's not like people are worshiping Santa Claus. Heck, I would say out of anything humanity has done to worship Jesus, Christmas has done more to spread goodwill, to help, cultures be stronger and have a more sense of community, and for people to think more about Jesus and to give more praise and remembrance to Jesus. It's done more to inspire goodwill toward, each other and for people to try to be better as people. I think overall, Jesus and God would be proud and happy of Christmas. I like Christmas trees. Granted, I like watching it snow, but I don't want to drive in the snow. I don't drive in ice. That's scary and dangerous. And it's really cold out there. But I like the snow. I like all that. And, I feel like a lot of kids, would see a Christmas tree and they would have this face. I imagine a lot of Jewish kids probably have this face in regards to Hanukkah. I mean, I really can't say I know much about Hanukkah, but I'm just saying this. It's good for there to be celebrations that help keep a community together and a family together. And it's just, I feel my dad's being an asshole about that. And again, he's an asshole about a lot of things. So, and I've already gone into details about that quite a bit in the past. Point is, I like Christmas. And I think that at the moment, this Beatrice is a good person. And while it is understandable that she becomes what she does later in the story, it does not excuse it. And same thing with guns, if say everyone at the Hanukkah celebration that got shot up in Australia, they all had guns, but no one came and shot them, well then, I would imagine that the whole day would go by without incident and no one would get shot at all. But like I said, it should be like the Dragon Balls. Like what Shenron said at the end of the GT, was that the Dragon Balls were meant to be a thing of wonder, a thing to be revered and respected, a last resort. The Dragon Balls, the ideal world is a world that is, things are so well that even though you have these magical wish-granting orbs, you never have to use them. And I guess that's what a gun is. Like, it's like, you should hope to never have to use it. But at the end of the day is this, yes, there are some situations where, and again, there's people in some eras of the world, whether it be lack of information, like especially before the internet existed, like if you're someone back like 1300 years ago, and all you knew was your own village, or just you're part of like the Roman Empire or some shit, you probably don't have a choice in terms of, you know, whether or not you kill people or not. Heck, to a large degree, the two main survival instincts that you would need would be greed and violence. Like, you would have to be greedy and you would have to be violent, because lacking the appropriate amount of greed or violence would lead to your death and the death of anyone who relied on you. Like, if you're a father and a husband and head of a household and you don't have enough money to support your wife and your children, well, everyone starves to death and dies. But if you don't have enough violence, well, then the fucking Mongols come down from Mongolia and they rape and kill all your children and wives and stuff. And you. And your cattle. You get the point. It's good to have strength. It's good to have means to defend yourself. It's good to have military arms. It's just that, I don't know, I think Spider-Man would put it well, with great power comes great responsibility. And having a gun would be great power, which means if you have a gun, you have a responsibility to use it responsibly. And even then, if you have greater power, then you just have to make sure to occasionally just, you know, try to keep yourself in check. You know, to not... And again, it doesn't mean you can't, you know, ever use the gun. It's not like Batman... Heck, as is, Batman should be killing people just because he's just punching people really hard. You know, humans break easy. But more than that, like, I'd say in the Injustice world where Joker, like, fucking used a nuke and blew up a city, I'm pretty sure in the situation where Superman didn't kill him, you know, I'm pretty sure the government or everyone else would just execute him. Heck, just given the way the things are with Batman animated series, like, you'd imagine all the other villains would eventually just start killing each other because they're like, what's that? This Joker guy's inconvenient. So you'd think everyone else would have issues. But of course, also, again, Beatrice or a lot of people in these situations, if a certain amount of help were administered, like, and things went better, Beatrice would never turn out to be the way she did later on in the story. At the same time, it doesn't excuse her behavior. She still has free will of it, especially as she has more power, she has the choice. And again, if you have power to use, I mean, there's no wrong in using it from time to time. But exceptions should remain exceptions. Like, if there's an exception to use your overwhelming power to, like, burn down a village or something, well, that should still be the exception. It shouldn't be like, well, now that I burned down one village, I'm just going to burn down every village at the slightest provocation. Like, no, it's like, that's a bit excessive. Like, yes, if you're in a position where you have great deals of power, there will be times where you cross certain lines, and there will be times that you do make exceptions. But just because you cross that line doesn't mean that line doesn't exist anymore. And it doesn't mean you can't just go back to the other side of the line. Like, basically, if you're in, like, some sort of combat zone, there's certain situations where you have to shoot some people. Just because you shot a few of them doesn't mean you have to constantly now shoot everyone. So just because, like, okay, Beatrice gets back her powers as a witch and she decides to kill Kenzo. Okay, fine. But there's not a reason to murder everyone else, let alone keep resurrecting them and murdering them over and over again. And again, it doesn't mean everyone is some sort of sympathetic villain like this. There's many people who literally become a villain because they are bad people. They may have even had happy, loving, wonderful lives where nothing ever went wrong. And there was never anything bad that ever occurred. And they just, well, chose to be bad people. Maybe it benefited them. Maybe it's just something they were excited by. Just saying this, not everyone is some sympathetic villain. And, of course, many of the, air quotes, sympathetic villains, especially for most horror movies, well, they do become to a point of being completely irredeemable. Then again, there's also lots of mixed messages when it comes to a lot of things, too. Because I do feel like, not only with Kenzo and Beatrice, the way they behave, but I feel with a lot of people I've met in my life who usually had authority figure positions over me, they treated things that happened as no matter what, it's going to be wrong. So no matter what decision you make, it's going to be wrong. And to the point that they'll criticize what you do, but even if you'd done the opposite, even if you did what they said that you should have done in that situation, then they would criticize that too. It creates an unwinnable scenario where, at which point, again, at that point, what do you choose to do? And the answer is, no matter what morality you have, your choice is you do what you want to do, based off what you think is right. If no matter what you choose to do or say, it's considered wrong by others, and there's no correct choice you can make in their eyes, then why should you care what other people think, or what they think is the correct choice? But simply make what you think is the correct choice based off your morality, what you think is right. And I'd say predominantly, again, I would say logic, compassion, common sense, survival. I would say cruelty should never become part of your language. It should never become something you're comfortable with. Now, I'd say if you're some sort of superpowered witch being, and there was groups of Nazis and stuff that were trying to conquer Japan or something, I guess, then yes. I mean, I'm just trying to think of some example. But basically, there would be some exceptions where you would use the power and actually kill or slaughter whole groups of people. But again, that should always be a line. That should always be an exception. And it should always be considered a lamentable thing. You should never feel comfortable or used to it. And of course, there's always that thing with Light Yagami. He starts off, okay, here's a person who kidnapped a bunch of kids in elementary school, and a dude who's going to rape some woman. As opposed to, well, hey, this dude who's a police officer told me I'm wrong. How dare he hurt my pride? Or, let's see. Oh, that reminds me. I was thinking about making a Clatonia 22. I was going to do a karaoke of Breaking All the Rules by Ozzy Osbourne, Liberate by Disturbed, Outside by Stained, and the Christmas Carol song, Silent Night. I was probably going to have a picture of Astolfo, maybe dressed in a cosplay of Vegeta. Heck, do you guys know Astolfo has the same height and weight as Vegeta? Heck. Describe my personality as a mix of various characters. One of them being a DBZ fusion, well, of course, Sailor Moon and Yusuke Urameshi. But another one being a Dragon Ball Z fusion of Astolfo and Jack Hanma. Heck, I think the physical appearance of that character, and even personality of said character, would be Ramado Amamura, which I have used in various pictures, including in the Umineko series for a thumbnail. But, yeah. And eventually, later on, Light's just killing anyone who's trying to catch him. He's killing people for any and all kind of crimes or politicians he disagrees with. And, heck, that's saying, we should never have a society where you kill someone just for having a difference of opinion. Especially if a person's trying to be a moderator, trying to talk to people and have open discussion. After all, that should be what we should aim for in a society, is we have open, polite discussion. And heck, eventually he's you know what, I'm going to kill people that are, not working hard enough. You're not, basically eventually getting eugenics. Oh, this person has Down syndrome. This person, oh, they only work 20 hours this week. This person failed to get a job. By the way, does anyone else feel like the job market today is really awful? It's really hard to get a job? I feel if I were to lose my current job, it'd be very difficult for me to get a different job. Heck, I spent a decent amount of time between the previous job I had when I quit that and trying to get another job. Granted, the first month or so I was trying to get in shape. Completely failed at that, but hey, we'll get there eventually. Work in progress. But yeah, I'm just saying, kind of, heck, always imagine like an alternate version of like, Sephiroth from, Final Fantasy VII, where like after he discovers that shit in the mansion about his backstory, how about instead of, burning down Cloud's hometown and slaughtering a bunch of people and then planning to like nuke the planet and become God, maybe what if him, Cloud, and Zack went to Dairy Queen and had some ice cream and talked about their feelings? Yeah, no one would have to die then. Then again, I'd be like the worst. I mean, Clatonia 21, I basically made the joke of what I would be like in the Batman universe. Absolute loner. I just follow Batman around and talk about my feelings, and then we get ice cream. The end. It's like, what'd you do for your evil thing? Like, well, I talked about my feelings, and I ate ice cream. And some Pepsi and some pizza. I don't know. I don't know where we're going with this. I like ice cream. But yeah, I haven't been to see a zoo in a while. Heck, last time I ever went to the zoo, my son was 2 years old. I took my son and my ex-wife. I mean, we were still married back then. Don't miss my ex-wife at all. Miss my son. But he's doing well as far as I know, so good. That's good. I'm sad about being alienated from my child. Heck, for the first 5 years of the divorce, I spent a couple hours a day sitting in my son's bedroom talking to his stuffed animals. Granted, for the first year and a half, he was at least coming over on the weekends. And then the pandemic. And then I spent a few years of seeing him like 4 or 6 times a year, hoping that would get better. And then I became like completely fucking alienated from him. I have 2 years. I have 2 years of birthday presents and 2 years of Christmas presents just sitting around that I have not been able to give him. I have not been able to give my son a hug in 2 years. But yeah, like I said, I'm doing better than I was in the past. I only spend about 15 minutes a day inside his bedroom talking to his stuffed animals now. Though there may come a time, because my mom was mentioned a couple months ago that whenever Dad dies, she won't have a place to live. So I'm not about to let my mom be homeless. I'd rather she have her own place, but I wouldn't let her be homeless. So I refuse to take the glow-in-the-dark stars off my son's bedroom walls. But I would probably move my mom into my son's bedroom, because I would not let my mom be homeless. Okay, let's focus on video game. I like zoos. I should go back to one in one day. Spend like a fucking decade or some shit. I like zoos. Heck, if it weren't for all the murdering shit she did later, but heck, if I met her at this point, I would want to take Beatrice to the zoo. Or Kyrie, or whoever. Heck, that's one thing I never understood, like why you would want to be around somebody who hates you. Granted, in marriage, you don't have a fucking choice, because you're legally stuck in a binding contract with someone who hates you, and who's abusive and adulterous, and also you have your child used as a hostage and a weapon against you, because you don't, after that point, if you go through a divorce, what happens to your child? And even then, how do you protect your child from an abusive, negligent parent who you knew would wind up getting custody in a situation of a divorce? Plus the way society is, the way the laws are. Also my own terrible self-esteem at the time, where I just kept blaming myself for the other person being, well, psychotic. But hey, I have a 3-inch scar on my right arm to remember my last Christmas being married to my ex-wife by. It wasn't until and I still tried to make that marriage work. Mainly for the sake of my son. Also my own low self-esteem, I guess. About like half a year or so after that, we got divorced and all that stuff, and about a half a year after we were officially divorced, I started to actually acknowledge that, hey, me getting a 3-inch scar on my right arm counts as, abuse. And a few years after that, I started to acknowledge to myself, hey, maybe that counts as domestic violence, even though I'm a guy. Maybe even though I'm a guy, you know, that still counts as domestic abuse. Then again, there was other worse stuff going on, but hey, I've already talked about that in previous videos. So, yeah. I'm just saying this. With Beatrice as she is right now, in terms of the way her personality is, I would like to take her to a zoo. I think that would be really fun and exciting. Even if it was just platonically as just friends. I think it would be exciting just to see her face happy, seeing all the different animals, and just the amazement and wonder on her face and to see her smile. I think that would be wonderful. Ah, I was just a little surprised when she finally gave me a gentle smile. Could that have been? But I do like that smile. A farsightedness brought about by her decision to venture out from her cage. It was a smile so gentle I couldn't imagine that it had come from that once dark face. When I speak with you, I keep hearing about things I don't know. I feel like I'm like, hey Beatrice, come over here. This is called a Super Nintendo. We're gonna play Super Mario World. No, I wouldn't make her play Kaizo Mario as the first game. The point is, I want the other person to enjoy the game. Now, obviously, yes, I did enjoy people like Ultra J-Man playing I Wanted to Be the Guy, but, you know, it's not like that's his first fucking video game. At that point, he went into it specifically knowing it was going to be a challenge. I've suggested people back in Let's Player days, back before I could do Let's Plays myself, games that I wanted to see, but I made sure clear to tell them, you know, what they were getting into. I wanted them to go into a blind, but I was like, hey, this game's going to be scary. Or, hey, this game is going to be very challenging. Like, this game will probably make you cuss a lot. But then again, I did play Super Meat Boy myself. So you want to hear me yelling and cussing at a video game. There you go. Then again, I also have the world record for the deepest floor in The Binding of Isaac Repentance. I went to floor 9,000 plus. Yes, I'd spent a couple months to make a fucking Dragon Ball Z joke. I don't even know about this thing called school, nor do I know about zoos. I don't know about movie theaters. I don't know about amusement parks. All those sound wonderful, and I feel from the bottom of my heart that I want to know about these things. Well, I'm sorry you never got to enjoy those things. That being said, all of those things are nice. Though at this point, I'm imagining Beatrice. You guys ever played the PS4 games, Date Alive? There's like 4 or 5 of those games on the PS4. But there's one called the Rio Reincarnation Trilogy. There's like the original Date Alive, I think, and then there's like AI something. And then there's Rio Reincarnation something. Anyway, I'm just saying it's a really great game. Got some great visuals, great environments, great character designs. I think it was really nice. I think the Date Alive video game was really cool. Will you take me to see them? Huh? Yes. I was nervous about how I could keep it a secret from Father, but her face looked so happy, so I went along with her and nodded. But she seemed not to notice the meaning behind my vague smile. I think the best way to do that would be go to Kraus. Even at that age, even if Kraus was still in high school or college or whatever, he would know that he could use it as leverage. And he know once the cat's out of the bag, Father can't. At that point, he'd probably go out of his way to try to make things good, I think. Then again, maybe I'm just trying to see the best in people, and maybe that best isn't there. She seemed to believe that I'd really take her to all those places. Were you lying? She was pure and genuine. She'd probably never been tricked by anyone. Oh, no. The time when she said she was upset at a human lying to her. She was talking about Rosa. That's very sad. No, maybe it's better to say that she'd never learned how to doubt. Her smile was somehow radiant, and yet pathetic. It's kind of like penguins. Penguins don't fear humans. Because in general, humans, we have a very clear rule. Don't hurt the penguins. So unless you're like someone who's like living there and you like have to eat, I guess. But even I don't think penguin meat would be good for you. But I'm just saying this. In general, humans tend to try. The humans that are in like Antarctica and other places where penguins are, they have a strict rule about not killing the penguins. That being said, if a penguin does come up to you, you also are not allowed to touch them. Not because they're dangerous, but because their fur seals in a certain type of oil to keep them warm. If you pet them, even just to be kind to them, it'll remove that oil, and then all of the heat will escape from their bodies and they'll freeze to death. I wanted to find a way to grant her modest wish. I have had enough of Beatrice. Okay, again. Beatrice? Even if you had to kill people in order to, like... Can you not leave the island? Like, once this shit's done, you're a 1,000-year witch. Can you just leave this island and go to the zoos and stuff? Like, why can't you go do the happy things you wanted to do once everyone's dead? I want to know who I am. Or are you also as much of a prisoner that after you kill everyone, you can't fucking leave? At which point... Stop the typhoon, let people go and bring stuff to you. Set you up as a fucking VTuber. And would like have where you can like live, like you can show up through the fucking laptop screen seeing places like a zoo. Like Battler can walk around the fucking zoo showing the stuff if you physically can't leave the island. Or bring like various things or watch stuff on a giant TV over there with you. Like if your soul is trapped on the island. I want to know who I am. I want to start out as a new human, not Beatrice. So I want you to take me away from here. I don't need tea anymore. I don't need this dress. I won't meet with Kenzo again. Please take me from here. Rosa. However, that responsibility was one that a child like me couldn't hope to fully bear. Still, when I saw her serious gaze along with that brilliant smile that made it look as though a possessing spirit had left her, I could feel a little courage start to rise up inside me. My nose is stuffy. Shit. I could feel a little courage start to rise up inside me. This was definitely something that would get me into a lot of trouble. And yet, it was definitely the right thing to do. I don't know how it'll turn out, but I'll take her away from here. Of course, I won't be able to talk to Father, and not Mother either. Should I talk to Oni-sama or One-sama? No, what about that reliable Genji-san? Oh, that's right. What about Kumasawa-san, to whom I can always talk to when I'm in trouble? I'm sure they'll be able to do... So it's not that Rosa lied to her. It's that Rosa chooses to trust these individuals. And they put their loyalty to Kenzo first. And thus they betray Rosa. And they betray Beatrice. Anyway, for now, I'll take her out of here. This was already a place she didn't want to be. So I took her to the crack in the fence and led her outside. She was all nervous, checking to make sure there were no wolves around, but once the fear disappeared, even just walking around this dense forest seemed to be fun somehow. Every time she found something, she'd ask me about it, and they were all really trivial things. Well, that's adorable. What's that flower? It's Nightingale. That's a nightshade. But this is adorable. What's that leaf? And that sound? And that smell? It really was like the inside of that fence had been her entire world. So, now that she traveled beyond the limits of her world, it's strange. When I first saw her, I really thought she was the witch herself relaxing inside the witch's mansion. But now it was different. Or actually, the complete opposite. She'd left a world where she believed to be finite, and was overjoyed at the realization that the world was so endless. Something she'd never thought of before. So everything she saw was new. It was almost as though she was the one who had been thrown into a fairy tale. If she was Alice, then I felt almost like the rabbit holding a watch. To her, it was probably a really fun walk, filled to the brim with excitement, but I was actually at a loss at what to do. After all, I walked randomly to get there. Of course, I didn't know the way back to our mansion. There were no lights in the forest, and I hadn't brought a flashlight. I realized it would be terrible if it got dark while we were still like this, and grew impatient. She was too innocent, and apparently she couldn't understand at all how frightening it would be to face the night inside the forest. But I was the one who brought her outside. I had to take responsibility somehow and resolve the situation. So I had thought, let's go out to the ocean for now. If we then follow the beach around, we should eventually make it back to the mansion. I mean, that's actually a really smart decision. I mean, honestly, even if at my current age, I would make the same choice. However, there was much more of a problem than I had imagined. I didn't have a map or a compass. There was no way I could walk in a straight line through an uncultivated forest, and I immediately lost my sense of direction. Well, I mean, it's an island. If you walk in a straight line, you'll eventually come to the ocean. And then if you're not at the mansion, then you just walk around in a circle until eventually you get to the part that's the beach you're familiar with. I already had no clue which trail I had come by, and was completely lost. At this rate, night would definitely fall before I had a clue where to walk. But this was no time to cry. After all, that woman following behind me was so innocent and having so much fun. So I definitely had to lead the way through this forest, for the sake of her smile as well. Gritting my teeth so that she didn't see me looking troubled, I pushed my way through the woods, advancing down a path that wasn't a path. And she fell off a cliff. Then after going through various troubles, I fortunately managed to reach the ocean. Now here's a problem. They do say, it is said, that if you ever are lost in the middle of the forest at night, the best thing you can do is just stay put. Because one, as it gets darker, even if it's dusk, even if you're in twilight, the change in light density makes it harder to tell depth perception. And as much as you don't think your body relies on this to walk, if you start walking when it's getting dark, your body will start misjudging the distance between your body and the ground, and you'll start stumbling. And it'll be very easy just to trip and fall on level ground and twist your ankle, let alone all the various hazards and hills and tree branches that would be in the middle of a forest. And once it's very dark, it would be very easy to fall off of an elevated area and hurt yourself seriously, if not die, in the complete dark. At that time, I still didn't even have a clue where I was on this island. But for the time being, I was just a little reassured, realizing that if I just went around this way, I would surely be able to return to the mansion, which is a smart decision. However, though I had reached the ocean, we were at the top of a rock cliff. The beach was far below us. I was tired from walking around the forest for so long, so I figured that an open area, even a rocky beach, would probably be much easier to walk in, so I suggested that we go down the rocky cliff somehow. It looked pretty dangerous, but I figured there was no other way. However, Beatrice agreed to my plan without any doubts, even though she was probably older than me. She meekly obeyed, almost as though she were some kind of chick who thought I was her mother. I searched to see if there was some part of the cliff I'd be able to get down. Then I found a place where the cliff had fallen over and made a slope. It looked like a little dangerous, and here's the thing. Beatrice doesn't properly understand the danger she's in, and even then, because she's not understanding that danger, she's not taking precautions to walk carefully enough. Because like I said, danger is an important thing that tells you to stay away from the dangerous things. Or if you do have to be on a dangerous thing, you take every precaution to not be careless or reckless. Now, you can't really say it's careless or reckless on her part because she doesn't know any better. It's kind of like a person getting too close to fire when they don't know fire's hot. But if I went down using both hands and both legs like I was crawling, I thought it'd probably be okay. Let's go down here. It'll be dangerous if we aren't careful, but if we go down to the beach and walk along it, I don't think we'll have to worry about being lost anymore. Indeed. If that's what you're doing, I'll go too. Even getting lost is fun for me. Quite amusing. She really had no sense of danger. There was probably no doubt that she'd lived a life without discomfort. And that's, again, she's definitely been very sheltered, but at the same time, she doesn't understand. It's like if you were to do everything for somebody, then they won't learn how to do things themselves. And of course, you have to help them with certain things. They can't just learn it. That's, again, why if you're teaching someone, you have to be patient with them. You have to take the effort to make them do it, but you have to actually be patient with them and let them learn it, because they're not going to instantly know it as quickly as you do. Even though she knew it would get dark when night fell, she couldn't imagine how dangerous the inside of a forest could be without a light. Furthermore, it seemed that she couldn't grasp at all how dangerous it might be if she fell from the cliff. I warned her repeatedly to be careful. I cautiously examined our potential route down. You guys say route or route? It seemed to be quite a long drop. I think it might have been around 10 meters down. It's like 30 feet, right? If you looked at it from the bottom up, it would probably have been shorter than the roof of the mansion. But looking from the top, it almost felt like staring down from the observation room from on the Tokyo Tower. That's called vertigo. But Beatrice still appeared to be completely without fear. It felt as though she had never even been taught that high places were dangerous. Maybe she believed that she was a witch, and that she could fly, so there wasn't any need to worry. Please be careful. We're pretty high up. Indeed. I shall be careful. It looks like we can get to the ocean if we go down. Is there an aquarium here? I feel like we're eventually going to see a facial expression of her being very scared. No, there aren't any aquariums on this island. But there is an aquarium that George and Rosa went to, which you were actually very excited at the idea of. But there should be lots of fish in the sea. I see. So there are fish. Fish! Are there whales and dolphins and penguins like you talked about? No, you'd have to go to an aquarium for those. And you'd have to leave this island to find an aquarium. Is that so? Well, I'm looking forward to it. What kind of fish are whales? They're really big fish. Aren't they mammals? And they spit seawater into the air. Oh. And dolphins? They're really smart fish, and weren't they also mammals? They're really smart and can be taught tricks and stuff. Oh ho! Then what about penguins? They're in the anime Evangelion? Weren't they birds? What's going on? We're talking about aquariums, but none of these things seem to be fish. You're too distracted thinking about the nature of mammals and fish. It's like, is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? And then you fall off a cliff and die. There aren't just fish. It's full of all kinds of things that live in the ocean. Ho-ho. I really am looking forward to that. Near death. Well, we saw a slight look on her face for a second. She let out what might have been a funny, rushed and short cry. No, it was probably a scream. It came right out of the blue. Her body separated from the cliff and silently fell. I immediately wanted to say something to her. I wanted to say, didn't I tell you to be more careful? It was the thought of a child. It was how a child immediately gets mad when something bad happens, trying to find an excuse to show it wasn't their fault. Of course I said it out loud. Are you okay? Didn't I warn you over and over? That's a lot of blood. That's a lot of damn. Oh, fuck. God damn it. But you guys know JonTron did a video on a dude like Phil Swift, the flex tape thing. I tried to make a reference. That's a lot of damage. I tried to do it with the same enthusiasm that Phil Swift does. Apparently I'm not in the condition to do that. Heck, I didn't have much of a voice for a couple days, and my voice has still been a little bit scratchy today. But heck, I remember there was JonTron did a video on Steven Seagal. I remember watching Smug Alana, the VTuber, do a reaction to that. Yeah, it was funny. I liked it. So, she fell from the cliff. And then what? What happened to her? Rosa? Rosa fell silent. Her gaze dropped to her feet as though she was seeing through the floor into some disgusting memory. She died, didn't she? Ava's brutal words were the ones Rosa had most wanted to avoid. And when she was hit with them, she screamed in resignation. Yes, she died. It was a rocky beach with lots of sharp and dangerous rocks exposed. Her eyes were still open, and an incredible amount of blood kept pouring out, quickly spreading out until it looked like a red carpet. I spoke to her, shook her, but she refused to respond, not even blink. No, she wouldn't even close her eyelids. It was my fault. She was wearing a dress, remember? Even though I knew her outfit was difficult to move in, I said we should go down the cliff. She was incredibly innocent, so she obeyed what I said without any doubts. How long do you plan on remaining dead? Open your eyes already, darn you, turning into a lump of meat all by yourself while I'm gone. I was just flirting with your ass Chin, friends. More importantly, what the heck's going on here? Well, as you can see, I missed my footing, fell down, and died. What the hell? Even though you showed up as the 19th person, you were already dead? Don't mess with me, that's impossible. Aunt Rosa was a kid and she was panicked. And it's not like a doctor was there. She probably just mistakenly thought you were dead, and you were probably alive pretending to be dead or something. Isn't that right? It can't be true. She's got to be alive. Otherwise, how can she be here? The kid aged Aunt Rosa shook Beatrice's body, crying. Unless Kenzo had also been forcing himself on this Beatrice as well and had another child, not just Rosa, and then raised that child to be Beatrice. Or Rosa's being possessed by Beatrice. Or Rosa's developed a split personality over her guilt, so that Rosa thinks she's Beatrice. And maybe Maria is Kenzo and Rosa's child. I don't know. All of it's fucked up. The kid-aged Aunt Rosa shook Beatrice's body, crying. I stared into that face too, but her eyes were still open, and it really was a corpse. I wonder, since we had all the stuff with other people, okay. I wanted to dodge the issue by saying something vague like she must be playing dead. But no matter how I looked at it, it didn't look fake at all. It really did look like she was dead. Wait, was Battler just watching the whole thing from his corpse like a ghost, the way they were like with Jessica and Cannon in the second episode? Here I was talking about playing Super Meat Boy. Battler lived Super Meat Boy. Beatrice had fallen upside down from a cliff of that height, and her head had smashed against the pointed tip of those sharp rocks. Yeah, you probably would die after landing on those rocks from that height. But I couldn't accept it. No matter how dead she looked, she had to be alive. Then she went on to become this damn irritating witch that makes all the inconsistency fit. Grandfather must have kept her confined constantly in a hidden mansion. Then, to take revenge for that, she committed several atrocious murders. Aunt Rosa probably just mistakenly thought she was dead, but she was actually alive, and as soon as Aunt Rosa left, would maliciously breathe again. Then she somehow lived on until today and opened the curtain on her revenge drama. Otherwise, the facts don't fit together. I won't let you trick me so easily. Can you repeat it in red? That she's certainly dead. She has to be alive, right? It's obvious. How does that look alive to you? It's definitely dead. It's definitely dead. Well, you did say it's an homunculus. After all, at one point, like, were you actually an illegitimate child told you were an homunculus of a witch? Or were you actually an homunculus? Is Kinzo really making test tube babies? At which point, I guess he just recaptured your soul and put it in another test tube person. Or are you like, I don't know. My theory was the 19th person was grandfather's mistress, the human Beatrice, had been defeated. I had planned to strike back from a defensive position, but... Then, who are you? You just died, right? Don't tell me you revived yourself with magic. Cackle. I've already explained that, have I not? The me lying over there definitely possesses my soul. But that body is nothing more than a cage of flesh tying me to the physical world. This is how that cage of flesh was broken. Do you understand what that means? I don't have a clue anymore. Keep having fun with your witch girl tricks. I'll listen to that in place of a snack. What the? It's empty. Hey, could I get some more black tea? Cackle. Renove, our guest would like some tea. When Beato clapped her hands, Renove appeared. Butlers sure are convenient. Both makes me think of Zelos Metallium, but also of a taller old cannon. Heck, also kind of makes me think of, I was going to say someone, but I can't remember who it was. Oh yeah, Diablo from Reincarnated as a Slime. A refill, you say? Certainly. How much shall I pour you? Well, I've got more than enough snacks. Half will be fine. Even so, filling to the brim is the English custom. Even though just enough to wet my throat would have been fine, he filled it to the top. I turned my back to Beato, sipping it in silence. Hey, wake up. Beatrice! Rosa shook me. No, shook the corpse that had once been me. I watched over her from a short distance away. Ah, so I fell from there and died. I am now a ghost. Fuck. For a while, I believed that was true. I saw Rosa, spent a long time beside my corpse, then watched her as she ran away. Eventually, I realized that I was a different individual from that corpse. That's right. I am me. So I finally managed to escape from Kinzo's bonds. Eventually, I felt the memory returning. The fact that I was an endless witch who had lived for 1,000 years. Then I remembered that I had been summoned by Kinzo, and that I had been imprisoned by him for a long time. While being imprisoned in a cage of flesh, I completely lost my memory as a witch. However, thanks to Rosa, if you could say that, thanks to my accidental death, I'd now finally regained myself. Rosa? You probably regret bringing about my death, but I should be thanking you. Cackle. I couldn't see Rosa anymore. Did she go to call a doctor, or was she so terrified that she ran away? It no longer matters. That soulless shell no longer has any value, and yet I'm so frail now. Even this glorious midday sun is agony to me. So is solar radiation hurting you? Like, can you put sunblock on a ghost? I destroyed my human form. Then I changed it into several gold butterflies. Yes, with my magical powers, as frail as it is, this form is much easier to maintain. Okay, that being said, I mean, technically, if we're talking solar radiation, technically heightened amounts of solar radiation can kill birds and flying insects. So technically, butterflies and bees and wasps and, birds of all kinds who fly at high altitudes, anytime there's an increase like aurora borealis type stuff going on, or weak parts in the magnetosphere, those things just sort of start to die. They either die from the radiation or their internal compass gets fucked up, and you have like bees that like act like they're drunk for a couple of days and then just sort of die or lose the ability to fly or cause like neurological damage. I mean, we already mentioned, like, hey, does using magic cause damage to her brain and her memory and her, like, dopamine and stuff? What about solar radiation? To escape even a little from the light of the sun, I rode the wind and gently flew up the side of the cliff. It will probably be a lot cooler in the forest. Anyway, I'll take some time to recuperate and regain my former power, as I ponder how to make Kinzo pay up all he owes me. Dancing alone through the air, I looked down at the shore one more time. On the rocky shore lay the figure of what had once been me, the figure I would eventually regain. To regain that form of that physical body I'd thrown away, it would probably take more than 100, 200 days. It might require 1,000 days, or perhaps even more. However, I am the Endless Witch, the Golden Witch who has lived for over 1,000 years. Waiting for any countable number of days would be no problem. Cackle, O Kenzo, regret that you are not here now. No longer will you be able to capture me. Cackle. I still think the cookies and the tea are human flesh. And then you changed into gold butterflies, hid in the forest, and waited for your magical power to be restored. Is that what you're saying? Okay, we'll call that an end to the video. Thank you to everyone for joining me, and hope you have a good day. And Merry Christmas. Even though it's 10 days away. Merry Christmas.